Okay, great. Let's get started. So I'm Asha. It's great to meet everybody. I am based in Singapore. So some of you may be on the other end of the world to me. We're in a very different time zone. It's evening here, quite late at night. So I hope all of you are having a good day or have had a good day. So I'm here to talk to you about Crowdtangle, which is a Facebook tool, and we'll get into the nuances of what the tool is, who uses it, what it's for, and hopefully how it can be helpful to you in perhaps some of the work that you're doing. I'd like to just introduce myself first. As I mentioned, I'm Asha, based in Singapore, and I run Crowdtangle International Partnerships team across LATAM, EMEA, India, and APAC. I've been with Crowdtangle for close to 6 years now. So I joined when it was a small startup, and then we were acquired by Facebook about 4 years back, and I had joined Facebook through the acquisition. So what is Crowdtangle? Well, let's get into it. Crowdtangle is a public insights tool from Facebook that makes it easy to follow, analyze, and report on what's happening with public content on social media. So you're probably wondering, a little bit more about what this public insights tool is. So as I mentioned, we never used to be part of Facebook. We were acquired by Facebook in 2017, I think it was. It feels like a long time ago. And we were, at that point, a startup that was primarily working with the news media. And we're now working with thousands of different newsrooms, also different media partners across entertainment and sports, but also with researchers and academics, nonprofit partners and IGOs. And that's, happening worldwide. And the way they're using Crowdtangle is primarily in 3 different ways, and we'll get into what they are in a moment. So as I mentioned, we were founded in 2014, originally as a tool for nonprofit, and then transformed the tool to be used primarily by journalists and news media. Since our acquisition in 2017, we became a free product for all Facebook partners. So any media partner that works with Facebook is eligible to get access to Crowdtangle. And then we've had global adoption pretty quickly since then. We now work with about 6,000 different newsrooms around the world. And then we have expanded access as well to researchers and academics and a lot of other not-for-profit entities as well. And essentially the goal with Crowdtangle is really to help people monitor what's happening on social media. And that is for Facebook and Instagram, as well as Reddit. And there is some Twitter data as well. So we are cross-platform. It's not just for Facebook and Instagram. So we've always, even pre-acquisition of being at Facebook, we've always had data from Twitter and Reddit as well. So the 3 ways that people are primarily using our tool, or what we try to solve for various users, is making it easy to discover posts or content on social media. So understanding what stories are trending and what sort of hashtags, keywords are gaining traction. We also help you analyze the performance of your pages on social, as well as benchmarking against different peer sets or competitors, or benchmarking basically any different accounts side by side. And then finally, we help identify influencers, and don't think of influencers in the traditional social media sense, but what we think about here is helping you identify who are the people sharing your content or sharing content that's important to you across social media. So this also could be where you look at people that have influence on platforms that are sharing misinformation or disinformation. And so this is where you can think about, influences in that sense. So what does Crowdtangle cover? I mentioned that we're cross-platform. We ultimately have a goal to measure every influential account on these platforms, which includes all verified users, profiles, accounts such as celebrities or athletes, government ministries or ministers, etc., as well as journalists and media and publishers. We're not meant to track regular people like you and I on Facebook. It's actually not capable of measuring people because we only track public data and content. And Crowdtangle doesn't measure overall usage or impressions of hashtags. So we're trying to capture all the accounts that create and sustain conversation on the platforms. And that's where that influence comes in. So you can think of Crowdtangle as directional and not absolute and not a complete look at the sphere of social media or all the conversations happening, but a look at those pages or groups of people that have sway or influence. So if you look at the numbers around what we track, we're tracking about 6 million Facebook pages, groups, and profiles. And those pages all have roughly a following of around 100,000 likes or more. We also track smaller pages, but we do have a threshold for automatically adding pages to track into our system. And then in terms of Instagram accounts, we're looking at about 2 million plus Instagram accounts at this point. So a quick FYI on metrics. As I mentioned, we make public content available, and that public content comes from pages, public groups, Instagram accounts, verified profiles on Facebook, and popular subreddits. And so the goal here is that we make these more discoverable for you and also understand the engagement data on that content. For example, the different shares and views and comments, etc. So what we measure here is public pages, public groups, interaction data, including video views and page likes. But what we don't measure is page reach, traffic, or clicks. So anything that would be only viewable to someone who was an admin of a page, for example. We also can't track private posts or profiles. So my own page on Facebook is just a profile, so it can't be tracked. And if you have a page but you put a sort of geogating on the profile of the page itself or on posts, we cannot track them because that adds a layer of privacy. In terms of paid or boosted posts, we can't tell if content was boosted. So we don't know whether there is organic or paid engagements. And we also can't see demographic information on users at all. So that means we can't tell you if people engaged with a piece of content and they were in X country or they're from X age group. And then on top of that, we also don't track metrics like Instagram stories or Facebook stories. And that's simply because it's ephemeral content that is not considered public content. So hopefully that kind of sets the tone for what Crowdtangle does and doesn't do, but let's get into the tool itself and understand those 3 use cases that I mentioned for tracking content. So we have a lot of people using Crowdtangle that are journalists. That is the predominant use case, but we also have people in the realm of academics and research who will use the tool to understand keyword trends or to track certain trends around misinformation or disinformation. And the world's your oyster there in terms of the kind of topics that you look at. Inside Crowdtangle, we have a search tool, which is a fantastic tool. It's very robust, and you can think of this as an advanced version of Google advanced search plus Facebook search, etc. In the sense that you can use very complex search terms, much like you do with any kind of Boolean search. So I will actually show you the tool in real time, but I just want to show you a quick overview of these things first. So inside the search tool, you can filter results by performance or interactions. And that's important here because that helps you identify content that's either trending or that's being shared by people who may have influence, whether that be somebody who has a large following or somebody in a position of power, like a president, for example, who's sharing content. And the search function allows you to do a very broad search for a search term or terms such as climate change, as shown in this example, or something much more specific, and it can be in any language as well. So I'm going to jump into a live example here. So just bear with me while I reshare my screen. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen now. So I've got our Crowdtangle search tool open here. So you'll see here that there's a lot of different aspects to the filtering. So first of all, I can put in a search term, and this can be in any language that's supported on the platform. So you know what, I might do a very generic search here for COVID-19. Now you can see at the top, there's a little tooltip bar as well. So if you're unsure sort of how to do different searches, we can help you here understand how to include and exclude different words. Then below this, we've got a bunch of different filters. So firstly, you should note that this is where Crowdtangle becomes cross-platform. So the first thing here is that we're looking at Facebook, but we can switch and look into any of these other platforms. We can then get a little more granular. So within Facebook, we could look at public groups or pages or verified profiles or all of them together. So this allows you, again, that breadth of search. We have a time frame as well. So the cool thing about Crowdtangle is the ability of it to look back historically. So you could look in real time, or you could go back into the history of different pages. You can also then select a kind of content that you're looking at. So if you were really just interested in videos, for example, you can do that. And then we have language filters. So on top of searching in different languages, you can also get results in a certain language. And you can actually pick multiple languages here as well. So if I wanted results for Arabic and Burmese for COVID or COVID-19 mentions, I can do that here. So then what you see in the results, very cool, at the top here, it tells you overall, with those keywords that you're searching, how many people liked, commented, shared, or engaged basically with content around those keywords. So it's COVID, no surprise that we've got 17 million plus different interactions here. And then we've got the number of posts. So within the time frame that I'm looking at, which is a 3-hour time frame, looking at videos only, I'm seeing about 132,000 different posts. So you can see just by the sheer number here, how robust the search is. As you scroll down, you're actually going to start seeing the content here. So over on the right is where I can filter by a content type. So I mentioned that Crowdtangle allows you to search and rank by different things. So I could look at content that just got the most comments, if that was really important to me, to track, certain potentially misinformation or harmful content. I want to see content that's really getting, a lot of engagement in terms of comments. I can do the same for shares or reactions. But we have these proprietary aspects here called over and underperforming. So this is helping you understand how much better a piece of content is doing for that page relative to that page over a time period. So it's really useful if you are looking at your own content, for example, to understand, when you're normally posting on Facebook, what's performing better than average. So a lot of people do tend to use overperforming, but there's also a good reason to use total interactions, because it will give you an overall view of just the raw number, basically, of people engaging. Then as you scroll down here, you'll see there's different posts coming through. I've not filtered by a certain language, so I am actually getting results in different languages here. So that's something to take note as well. If you want to look very specifically for language results, I suggest you do that in this filter here. So you'll see this is a video from UNICEF. I can see all the data around the engagement. So I can see that it had 23,000 video views. I can see that about 700 people liked it or reacted, 86 people shared it. And then this little graph is going to show you how the interactions changed since this post went up. So it gives you a good sense of content that gets, goes viral quickly or has a kind of spike in engagement. So if we go back up here to the search, again, we can change the platform that we look at here. We're going to see different results if we're looking, at Instagram, for example, or for Reddit. And so we see this tool being used a lot for tracking stories that are happening or big events. Journalists are using this a lot to kind of keep up with what's being shared around certain things. It's also a very good tool for fact checkers or researchers who are, trying to do either real-time monitoring of content such as hate speech or historical content, because you have that ability to go back in time here and look back a year or even more, for example. So it's a really, really helpful tool in that sense. Now, this is a live tool, and each time you kind of change the filters, you're going to see different results loading. But it's really important to know that you can actually download everything from Crowdtangle. So just over here, we've got the little export button. And now I'm able to get all of this data in a CSV format. So if I need to, I can do my own analysis, and not just use this interface that we have. I have another example here, a very generic search term for Myanmar. And so again, you can see the number of interactions and posts using this keyword is massive. Obviously, it's a very broad, search, because we're really just looking at one word. So I'm going to see a lot of content here. But if I start to add in more keywords, in language especially, I'm going to be able to hone those results a little bit more. The other thing that's important here, particularly for tracking harmful content and misinformation, is meme search. So this is a pretty new feature in Crowdtangle. You are able to now search for content based on text in an actual image, or text that has been added sort of as a comment in the post. And so using keywords, then you can start to track memes in that way. And additionally, you can also search by image now. So if you were trying to do a kind of reverse image search, like you can do on Google, you can either paste a URL in here from any platform, whether it's Twitter or Facebook, etc., or a website, or you can drag the image in and do a search. Now that's going to help you find where that particular image has been shared, whether it be different Facebook pages or groups. And potentially, if you look back, in your custom time range, you might be able to find the origins of where that was shared, which is often impossible to do, or very, very difficult to do on your own. So let me pause there and see if there's any questions so far. And I'm going to dive back into the tool again and show a little bit of a different aspect of the tool and how it's being used for tracking misinformation and disinformation. So any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat and I'll get to them as soon as I can. Okay, so let's jump back into a bit of an overview of other aspects of the tool. So one thing that Crowdtangle does really well is helps you curate different lists of Facebook accounts or Instagram accounts to track. And so you can think of this as just the way you might build a Twitter list. You can do the same now for Facebook and Instagram through Crowdtangle. So if you were wanting to track, journalists, for example, in Sweden, you could track them all from their Instagram accounts or their Facebook pages, provided that they were public in one place. The same goes for if you wanted to track the United Nations and all their different country affiliated accounts, etc. Or any other accounts, whether it be prime ministers, presidents, etc. So again, as long as it's public, you can track it in Crowdtangle. So you can see the example here inside of a Crowdtangle dashboard. When you have access, basically you can build out different lists. So here I've got an example of media in Africa, African ministries of health that I'm tracking. I have celebrities, journalists and anchors, etc. And so I can do this curation at the country level, at the city level, global level, whatever it is, depending on what you're tracking. A lot of these lists Crowdtangle will build and you can access them. So they're kind of a shared resource, but you also have the ability to build your own, and they would only be for your use. They're not shared with any other Crowdtangle user. So the great thing about Crowdtangle is that we do have a lot of real-time ability, so you can monitor live conversations and events as they're happening. And the main way that people are doing this inside the tool is through what we call live displays. So let me just jump out and show you in real time. So these live displays are a little bit like, I guess, a tweet deck, but it's for Facebook, Instagram, and Reddit. So they're it's three cross-platform tool in this sense. So a lot of, we see them being used by journalists in the newsroom, up on a second screen. They're used on air as well. So you may have seen them on different news channels or programs that you've watched. But they also can be used for real-time monitoring in quote unquote war room situations where you might be all working together on something, sort of huddling around a project, and you just need to be monitoring things in real time. So you can build these out for specific topics. So I'm going to show you in a real example here just to make it easier. So okay, I have a couple questions that have come through as well, so I will jump to those just in a moment. Okay, great. So the live displays look like this in real time. So I'm using a couple of our global COVID-19 vaccine live displays that we've built, which are publicly available. So anyone can access these, and I'll share the link with everyone. But essentially, this will be your kind of high-level look at what the WHO is posting, what different global media outlets are sharing about vaccines and the vaccine rollout across the world, and various sort of breaking news alerts around that. And that is coming from Facebook, but as also Instagram. So you can see I'm just kind of scrolling across here, and this is updating, in real time. So these are really, really great to have on your desktop or a second screen, something to just kind of keep looking at throughout the day. So I will share that link now in the chat. So this is, it's the Global Public COVID-19 Hub. So I want to make sure everyone has access to that. So we actually have a global COVID-19 and a global vaccine dashboard. And then we have them broken down by region and country as well. So if you were in Indonesia and you wanted to track what's going on there in terms of COVID-19, you can simply open this and you can now track everything in Bahasa from all of the local media. Okay, great. I'm going to just jump into a couple of questions. So first question here is it possible to use Crowdtangle if you don't have a Facebook account? Unfortunately, no, it isn't, because you do have to log in through a Facebook account. And the only reason being is for the two-factor authentication. We don't actually track profiles. So if you log in with your account, we actually can't see the data, but it's simply a login mechanism. So the second question here, is it possible to track down content which was removed by Facebook in breach of community guidelines? That's a really great question. So that is not possible, because content that gets deleted will be removed from Crowdtangle, because we're tracking data in real time, public data. So as soon as it gets removed from Facebook, we just won't have access to it anymore. So that's a question we get quite a lot, actually. Another question here is about integration. So can you use Crowdtangle in Gephi to build visualization graphs? So yep, you can. I mean, essentially, we do have an API. It's not like open and public to everybody, but if you apply for access, you could use the API and then integrate that into pretty much any other system and visualization tool as well. So we do see people, particularly researchers, doing that as well. Great. Any other questions for now? Okay, let me jump back in. I have a couple more things to show you before we have any questions or wrap up. Okay, so you reshare for you. Okay, great. So as I mentioned, with the live displays for real-time tracking, I just shared the link to our global COVID hub, which has 100 different country-specific displays. So this is something that you can use right now, and you can share this widely because it is publicly available content. The other aspect of Crowdtangle, which is really useful, is alerts and digests. So we have real-time alerts or scheduled email alerts or notifications. So everything that you do in Crowdtangle can essentially be automated. So we could send you an email daily as a digest, for example. If you were tracking specific topics around COVID-19 and you wanted an email about, any time that keyword got mentioned or, started to trend, you can get those alerts and digests through Crowdtangle. So we try to kind of take a lot of the manual labor, so to speak, out of the tool. And once you set up your own dashboard, you can basically then kind of automate it and log out. And you don't have to, constantly log into Crowdtangle to check it. We also have an integration with Slack if that's something that you use. So last but not least, I just wanted to share our resources with everybody, and also talk a little bit about how you can get access to Crowdtangle, because I don't know if everybody on the call here would actually be using the tool. So this is our website, crowdtangle.com. So anyone can jump on the website. You can see all of our case studies, training videos, etc. So you can actually learn a lot about Crowdtangle yourself. And then if you want access, you can apply. So let me show you how to do that. And okay. So Crowdtangle is, as I mentioned, a free tool by Facebook. It is not a public tool, even though we track public data. It's not a tool that anyone can use. So if you have a Facebook account, you'll get access to your Facebook insights. But Crowdtangle doesn't quite work in the same way. So you do need to apply to get access. So journalists, news media, any sort of publisher that works with Facebook gets access. We also have a program for academics and researchers, which is, again, you just need to apply through the website. And then on top of that, we do also work with some IGOs and nonprofits as well, particularly those that work in the realm of public health, misinformation, disinformation, and preventing harmful content as well. So if you jump on our website here, you'll be able to see, as I mentioned, all the different case studies. There's a few really great ones here that do talk about misinformation and how different news outlets and researchers have used the tool. And so this is a really, really good way to actually kind of self-learn how to use the tool. Any other questions about Crowdtangle? I will caveat that I've only shown you a bit of the tool, and we could spend hours kind of going into it in a lot more detail, but hopefully that gives you a good sense of what the tool is and how it can be used. Okay, I have a question here. So what have been the most creative uses of Crowdtangle that you've seen for our field in conflict violence prevention? What are the practical applications that you would suggest? So there have been a lot of creative uses. I think the best cases I've seen are from fact-checking organizations, as well as I guess academics or people that are really focused on violence prevention or conflict prevention, using the historical data aspect of Crowdtangle to do research, basically to have a look at a conflict that has happened, to understand how we could have potentially prevented it through tracking content across different platforms. So historical data is really a fantastic aspect of the tool that will really be applicable for conflict violence prevention, but a lot of that is often in the aftermath and the research that's done later. In terms of real-time tracking and prevention, the search tool and the live displays that we have are fantastic products to use for that. And the best ways that I've seen those tools being used is by people who spend a little bit of time to set up the keywords and the search terms and do that in real time as a situation evolves. And then they're able to track the trends and the content that's being shared. And the coup in Myanmar is a really recent example of that, where we have seen at Crowdtangle a lot of journalists using the search tool to track the latest memes or hashtags and sort of understanding how people are gathering online to kind of spread messages, and that's sort of, you know, very, very important practical application of the tool. Thank you for that question. Another question here is, this is a good one. What's the start year for historical data, and how far back does the tracking of Crowdtangle go? So the start year for historical data is dependent on two things: when the page began, or if it is the Facebook page, like when it was started, but also it can depend on when we started tracking it. In theory, when we start tracking a page, we actually continue to take historical data from that page as long as the content is available. So in theory, if you added a page into Crowdtangle to track and it was started in, I don't know, 2010, you can track all the way back to that time. So it's actually the only tool that has that, that level of historical data. So effectively, it goes right back to the beginning of the page or the group on that social platform. Another question about the meme search, to throw a little more light on the meme search. So the meme search is, so we built firstly the image search as a way to kind of help with reverse image search. So particularly for fact checkers who are trying to verify content, they find that great to find the original piece of content. In the same way, that can also be helpful for tracking hate speech and the spread of content. The meme search was something that was built kind of as a addition to that, particularly when it comes to hate speech or violence, because we do see a lot of content being shared around that in the form of memes. So the idea with the meme search is that you can track the text that is either overlaid on an image. So you might see a meme get edited slightly as it gets shared across different platforms. Sometimes people add text on top of that image or your photo, cartoon, whatever it is. So within our meme search, you can actually search for that piece of text that's on top of the meme itself, the image itself. But you can also track then what the person writes when they post that or when they share that. So it kind of gives you this double layer of search functionality, which is quite hard to do, at least directly on Facebook. Another question here just about, Okay, there's a new story about Southeast Asia NGOs that got some funding to improve digital operations. So how do organizations apply for this funding? That's Erica who's asked. I'm not sure exactly which story that is. We have had a few different stories in the media and case studies around this. I'm happy to follow up directly with you if you want to send me a message. Essentially, Facebook does have various different programs for funding. At this point in time, for Crowdtangle, we don't. We only have a program running for journalists at this point. But yes, we do sometimes have different funding programs available. Oh, Erica, thank you for the link. Yes. Okay, so this is part of the journalist program I mentioned. So Verifiles in the Philippines, which is a fact checker and a journalist organization, had some funding from Crowdtangle to help them upskill their journalists. Basically, we were helping them develop their skills across different social analytics tools. So we do this from time to time. That program is just closed, but we will be looking at doing another one, probably not until next year. But yes, stay tuned because we do announce that through the website. Okay, this is a great question from Marcella. When it comes to searching for evidence of, for example, violence that's being planned, would it be necessary to search private Facebook groups, and can that be addressed? Great question. So yeah, I guess it would be necessary to search private groups. Certainly, all content gets shared across various different ways. Unfortunately, with Crowdtangle, we can't track private groups because we don't have access to that data. Even though we are part of Facebook, we only deal with public content and public data for privacy reasons. So we can't do that, unfortunately. The only way to track it would be if you were in that group yourself. So you would actually be looking at it directly on Facebook. So unfortunately, Crowdtangle can't address that. Any other questions? Great. Well, let me just finish by saying thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate everyone joining. I hope it's been helpful. And if anyone has any follow-up questions, you can absolutely reach out to me. So I will put my contact details through here. And you can go to crowdtangle.com as well to actually reach out to any of our team just to ask questions or to apply for access as well. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope you have a good day ahead or a good evening, and take care. Stay safe.